mission, perhaps you should flee!
Way out in the future, so far ahead that Earth is little more than a fading myth, humanity has scattered across the stars. Entire civilizations now exist on distant planets, building new homes, chasing fresh starts. Back in the day, people used to travel by bus, train, or plane, right? Well, now it's the same deal, but they're hopping from one planet to another every single day. They're looking for new lives, new jobs, new purposes. That's how Hunter Gainer ended up on this long journey. She was on a transport ship just cruising through deep space, heading to its destination. This ship had about 40 passengers, all tucked away in cryosleep pods. A cryosleep pod is basically a place where your brain shuts down for a bit. You don't get hungry, you don't age, and you just sleep for months. But hidden among these sleeping people was a monster. Someone sleep could never touch. Riddick, a cold-blooded killer whose name made laws and rules tremble. He was being taken to the most dangerous prison on a remote planet. Even inside the pod, he was completely shackled, blindfolded, but wide awake. While everyone else's minds were dormant, he felt everything. He knew there were 40 people on that ship, some laborers, some miners, a Muslim preacher, and a cop named Mr. Johns, who was the one who caught Riddick. Riddick was so terrifying that this 22-week journey was planned on a route with no stops, just to make sure he couldn't escape. Only 2 weeks into the trip, something happened that woke everyone up for good. The ship slammed into a meteor cluster. Those little space rocks started hitting the ship like bullets, piercing through it and even going straight through the captain's body. The captain died in his sleep, but the system automatically woke up all the crew members just in time. The pilot, Fry, and the navigation officer, Owens, took over. When they got to the control room, they saw the ship was a fireball, plummeting at full speed toward an unknown planet. Fry tried to control the ship until the very last second. She managed to slow its descent, but couldn't avoid the crash. The ship crashed hard on the ground. Most of the passengers died in the accident, and Owens, the navigation officer, also perished. Only a few people survived. Fry, the pilot, Imam, the preacher, and his 3 sons, an arrogant antique dealer named Paris, a young boy named Jack who had secretly snuck onto the ship, 2 colonists, Zeke and Shaza, the police officer Johns, and finally Riddick, the monster. Not only did Riddick survive the crash, but he also escaped John's custody and was now lost on that strange planet. This planet was weird. The air was breathable, but all around them was just scorching desert. No greenery, no water, just a blazing sun and blistering heat. At first, the survivors were just thankful to be alive. They thanked Fry. But Fry knew their real trouble was just starting because the ship was totally destroyed, and in this barren world, there was no sign of water or food. They immediately started checking what they had left and how long they could survive. After checking, they realized they had nothing but a few bottles of alcohol. Their hope started to fade. Then Imam came over. He said confidently that they should trust God and that even in the desert, they could find water if their vision was true and their search was intense. His words seemed to steady everyone's courage for a moment. Now everyone was ready to look for water, but water wasn't the only problem. Another danger was roaming free under the open sky. Riddick. Johns warned everyone that Riddick would want to survive at any cost, and he'd try to steal their resources to get off the planet. He wouldn't hesitate for a second to kill anyone who got in his way. This filled everyone with terror. After that, they all went outside. Outside, they saw an amazing sight, 3 suns in the sky, including a blue one. Seeing this, Imam smiled and said that it was a sign from God that water is also blue, meaning water would be in that direction. Fry and Johns, along with Imam and his sons, started walking in that direction. Johns was on alert because he had found Riddick's broken handcuffs in that same direction a little while ago. A bit further on, Johns looked through binoculars. He saw dry trees behind a hill in the distance. If there were trees, there had to be water. With this hope, they went towards the hill, but what they saw made their hair stand on end. Those weren't trees. They were the bones of some giant creatures standing in tree-like shapes. The whole area was littered with these gigantic skeletons. Perhaps a massive species once thrived there. Everything was so quiet and still, it felt like some ancient catastrophe had swallowed their existence in one fell swoop. They all walked through that desolate area filled with skeletons, passing through a narrow valley, a canyon, and what they saw ahead of them shocked everyone. There was a settlement built by humans. It looked like it used to be a research lab, but now every door was open and every wall was covered in dust. It seemed like they had left years ago. There was also a water source there. Imam thanked his God when he saw it. Meanwhile, Fry entered a closed room in that deserted settlement. The room was completely dark and the walls were covered in thick dust. In the middle of the room was an old planetary model. It could be used to figure out the positions of the suns and planets in that world at any given time. There was no electricity in the room. Fry opened the window And as soon as sunlight came in, the planetary model started spinning on its own. That model showed 3 suns and 3 planets between them. The middle planet was where their spaceship had crashed. Because of the suns all around, it was never dark there, so rooms didn't need lights. Now Fry came to the back of that room. Then her eyes lit up. A small spaceship was standing there. It was old, but maybe still flyable. Meanwhile, back at the crashed spaceship, Zeke was burying the dead bodies. There were a lot of mound-like formations nearby, like termite nests. Zeke was digging a hole near them. He had no idea that Riddick was lurking nearby like a shadow. Just then, Zeke spotted a tunnel under the dirt. He turned on his flashlight and peeked inside. The tunnel was deep, shrouded in darkness. He had only gone a little further when something suddenly emerged from inside and pulled Zeke away. It was too late. The edge of the pit was covered in blood, and Zeke was gone. In a nearby corner, Riddick was sitting quietly with a knife, completely still as if nothing had happened. As soon as he saw Shazza, he ran off at full speed. Johns pounced on Riddick, but when Riddick counterattacked, Johns pulled off his goggles. Riddick became like a blind man. He couldn't see anything clearly in the sunlight. Taking advantage of this, Johns knocked Riddick out again and took him captive in the ship. A little later, Fry came to him and asked angrily what he had done with Zeke. She asked if he had killed him and where his body was, but Riddick was completely silent. Fry said angrily that if he didn't open his mouth, they would leave him there to die. As Fry started to leave, Riddick said, "Didn't you hear that growl?" Fry was startled and asked, "What growl?"
All you people are so scared of me. Stairs, I take that as a compliment.
Something else was far more dangerous. Riddick was a terrifying enigma. Fry went closer to look into his eyes. Then Riddick lunged at her suddenly like a wild animal. His eyes gleamed like pearls in the darkness. Fry also froze in fear for a moment when she saw him, but Jack was standing in a corner far away, completely fearless. He looked into Riddick's eyes and asked what he had to do to get eyes like that. Riddick said, "First, you have to kill some people."
Okay, I can do it.
Riddick smiled, then stared at him and said that then he would be sent to a terrible place where the sun never rises. A dark prison full of monsters called the Slam. There he would find a doctor who would cut open and change his eyes, giving him eyes so he could see clearly even in the dark. Riddick's words filled Jack with obsession, but Fry shooed Jack away. Riddick said the boy was curious. He then told Fry that he was a killer and had committed many murders, but he didn't kill Zeke. Fry asked where Zeke's body was, saying they had looked in the tunnel and he wasn't there.
Look deeper.
Fry thought about it and decided right then to go deeper into that tunnel. Although Johns tried to convince her that Riddick was a deceiver and must have buried Zeke somewhere else, Fry had seen a truth in Riddick's eyes. She tied a rope around her waist and went fearlessly into the tunnel. As she moved further into the tunnel, she reached a cave. The cave was quite large, and there were many other tunnels branching off inside. A faint light was coming from above in the cave. In that light, Fry forgot to notice that death was crawling on the walls of that dark cave. Who knew what those creatures were? They were spread all over the cave. Fry could hear their movements, but they were hidden from her sight. Meanwhile, looking around, Fry saw Zeke's shoes. It looked like Zeke was hiding there. But when Fry went closer to look, it wasn't Zeke, but half of his leg. It looked like someone had chewed off the upper part. Fry shuddered. Then something passed by her. Fry's heart leaped into her throat. Without looking back for a second, Fry climbed to the upper opening of the cave at full speed. Fry had just breathed a sigh of relief outside when her rope started pulling with full force. Luckily, Johns and the others caught Fry in time and cut her rope. At that moment, the others also caught a glimpse of those terrifying creatures. Their souls trembled too. Now they understood that the danger they faced was even more terrifying than Riddick. Johns unlocked Riddick's shackles, but on the condition that Riddick would help them get off this planet. Riddick agreed, but in return, he wanted his freedom. They made a deal, and they all returned to that deserted settlement abandoned by humans where Fry had found the old ship. Fry and Shazza started repairing the old ship. Fry found that the ship's batteries were dead. To restart it, they needed 4 batteries, and they could get the batteries from their crashed ship. This meant they could now leave easily. They all sat down peacefully and celebrated this good news with alcohol. During this time, they were discussing what might have happened to the people who came here for research. Did they go back? But all their important belongings were still there. How could they leave them behind? And their ship was also there. On this, Johns gave his opinion, saying that obviously the ship must not have been useful to them. Perhaps it was a disposable ship. Besides, that ship was only for 2 people, so they must have left it.
These people didn't leave. Come on. Whoever got Zeke got them. They're all dead.
Everyone's faces hardened because they also suspected the same. Meanwhile, Imam's son, Ali, wandered off and reached the coring room. This was the room where the ground was once being surveyed for mining. That dark room was locked from the inside, but Ali had entered through a broken wall. He had no idea that the room had become a dwelling for those alien creatures. They were hanging from the dark corners of the ceiling like bats. Just then, Ali accidentally turned on the power in the room, which automatically opened the window above and bright light came in. Imam and the others rushed without wasting time, broke down the door of the coring room, and entered. At that very moment, a swarm of those fierce flying creatures also attacked them. But as the door opened, the outside light spread into the room, and those shadow-like creatures, out of fear, retreated into a dark well inside the room. But the real horror was now in front of them. Ali's body lay on the ground, half-eaten and brutally torn apart. Those hungry creatures had gnawed off every piece of his body, and only his skeleton remained. Imam's heart seemed to break. He performed Ali's last rites according to religious customs. Meanwhile, the others were busy investigating the well. Johns threw a glowing stick down there. Then a terrifying sight appeared. The well was filled with human skeletons, and there were also many tunnels in that well. Those flying creatures had gone into those tunnels. Then Riddick said he had told them no one had ever returned alive from here. He added that the doors of this coring room were the strongest, so they must have hidden inside this well to escape these creatures. But they didn't know that the creatures' home would be under the ground. Now everyone was terribly scared. They decided to leave that planet as soon as possible. But John said there was no need to worry. He said whatever those creatures were, they were afraid of light, and it never got dark there. So he advised not to panic too much and just avoid the dark. Johns' words made Fry think. She was worried, wondering why the people there would hide in that well to escape those creatures if it never got dark there. Then Fry found an old soil sample in the coring room.
These coring samples are dated. Last one's 22 years ago this month.
At that moment, something clicked for Fry. She immediately ran back to the room where she had previously found the planetary model of this planet. Fry started turning the dial that changed the year on it. As she flipped through the years, the positions of the planets and suns changed, and as soon as it stopped at year 22, a terrifying pattern of planets emerged. Fry saw that every 22 years, those 3 planets and 3 suns would align in such a straight line that the middle planet, where they were stranded, would be completely plunged into darkness, a total eclipse. Another frightening thing was that once they aligned, the 3 planets would continue to orbit together for some time. This meant that this darkness wouldn't just last for a few hours, but for many days, or perhaps months. And in this darkness, those ferocious nocturnal creatures would emerge, turning any living thing in their path into a pile of skeletons. Now panic had increased among those people. They were just praying that an eclipse wouldn't happen before they could get out of there. But perhaps their prayers had little effect. They saw a large planet covering the sun. The eclipse was coming soon. Without wasting any time, they all got into a solar-powered truck there and immediately headed towards their crashed ship so they could all bring those heavy batteries to this ship as quickly as possible and start the ship before dark to get out of there. Driving the truck at full speed, they finally reached their crashed ship. Without wasting time, they started loading the heavy batteries into the truck, but their speed was slow compared to the pace of the eclipse. In the sky ahead, that monstrous planet was slowly swallowing the sun. As soon as the sunlight disappeared, their solar-powered truck shut down instantly, and then a spine-chilling sight was before their eyes. Trembling with fear, ran at full speed towards a cargo cabin of the ship that had crashed far from the main wreckage. The strong iron structure of that cabin was the only thing that could save them now. Everyone quickly got into that cabin, but Riddick and Shazza were left behind. The creatures flew towards them rapidly, but Riddick and Shazza moved out of their way and jumped into a pit, lying there for a few moments without making a sound. From afar, Fry tried to tell Shazza not to move at all, but Shazza was scared. She got up, but as soon as she tried to run, those ferocious creatures swarmed her like fire and tore her apart and ate her in a few moments. Riddick, who had been calmly lying there watching all this with a smile, got up as soon as he got the chance, dusted himself off, and calmly walked toward the cabin. Now the last glimpse of the sun also disappeared behind that massive planet, and that planet was completely covered in darkness. At that very moment, even larger and more ferocious alien creatures broke through the mounds above the caves and came out, heading out to hunt. This terrifying scene was invisible to everyone due to the darkness, except for one, Riddick, whose gleaming eyes could see everything, even in the dark. Everyone was hiding in the cabin, scared and trembling. They guessed that the creatures probably couldn't see, but had echolocation abilities. By making clicking sounds, they could figure out what was in front of them. The creatures started making holes in the outer layer of the cabin with their sharp claws. Seeing this, everyone moved to the inner layer of the cabin into a desolate, dark room. They had an iron-cutting torch and a battery-operated flashlight. In its light, they were looking around to see if there was any danger. Just then, Riddick felt something. He went and stood in a dark corner. His gaze was fixed on something. He stood still like a stone. An alien creature was hidden above in that dark corner. It had already entered there in search of prey. Riddick silently merged into the darkness. Then Imam's son, Hassan, wandered there. Suddenly, his eyes also fell on that creature. He froze in place. Riddick was right behind him. He whispered softly, telling the boy not to move at all. But Hassan was terribly scared. He started to run. But then another alien suddenly emerged from in front and tore Hassan in half. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Riddick ran. The creature was right behind him. Then Johns arrived. Riddick ducked, and Johns rained bullets on the creature, which brought it down. Fry shined her flashlight on it. Then they saw that even a faint light was burning the creature's body. They now understood the creature's weakness, but the lights they had wouldn't last long. Once the light ran out, they would be done for. Then Fry decided that they had to reach the ship before the flashlight batteries ran out. They would still stick to their plan and silently walk toward the settlement with the batteries. For safety, they needed more light, for which they gathered hand flashlights, an iron-cutting torch, glowing tubes, and also took bottles full of alcohol so they could light them like lamps for light if needed. After this, everyone tiptoed toward the settlement. Riddick was walking in front because he could see in the dark. Meanwhile, Johns and Imam were dragging the heavy batteries. Just then, after walking a short distance, Paris's iron-cutting torch went out. Paris went to get another torch, but in his nervousness, that torch also slipped and fell far away. Seeing this, naive Jack took out his glowing tube and went to pick up the torch. They were surrounded on all sides by those ferocious alien creatures, but because of the light, they were safe so far. Paris trembled with fear and in panic started running in another direction. The glowing tube was still wrapped around him. As soon as he went a little further, the plug of the glowing tube separated from the battery and darkness surrounded Paris. As soon as his lighter went out, the aliens pounced on him and tore him apart, eating every part of his body. Meanwhile, due to the darkness, the others couldn't see Paris's terrible death, but Riddick was watching him intently with his glowing eyes, as if this horrifying death was giving him peace. After the glowing tube went out, Fry and the others had prepared lamps by lighting alcohol bottles. They kept moving forward without stopping, but they soon realized that Riddick was leading them around in circles instead of towards the settlement. Johns, annoyed, asked Riddick if this was some kind of joke. He said that instead of leading them towards the canyon, he had brought them back to the same place. Riddick said he knew, but it was necessary. He said he was assessing the situation and needed time for that. He added that death was lurking in the canyon, a whole pack of these alien creatures, and the girl with them was bleeding because of her period, and blood scent attracted those aliens. Hearing this, Fry said, "What are you talking about? I'm not bleeding." Riddick said he wasn't talking about her, he was talking about that girl, referring to Jack. Actually, Jack was a girl who was disguised as a boy, so people would think she was strong and treat her well. So until now, Jack had been attracting those creatures. Now passing through the creature's territory meant inviting death. Fry was also very scared now. She said that instead of going further, they should go back. But Johns got angry with her because it was Fry's plan to bring them there. Johns now didn't want to back down. He went aside with Riddick alone and started making a plan. His plan was to kill Jack and use her as bait, throwing her body into the canyon in front of the swarm of creatures to get through the canyon. Riddick laughed. Johns had surpassed Riddick in depravity, but Riddick wasn't surprised because Johns wasn't actually a cop, but a bounty hunter disguised as a cop. He was taking Riddick to prison to get a reward from the police. In reality, Johns was a maniac. To control his insanity, he secretly took drugs. Without being high, he could do anything. Johns started instigating Riddick to kill Jack, as if Riddick was his slave. But hearing all this, Riddick lost his mind. He said if they were going to make bait, why not make a bigger one? He attacked Johns. A scuffle broke out between them, but in the end, Riddick injured Johns and pushed him into the darkness and tore Johns apart. Now Riddick took charge and started pulling those heavy batteries alone, leading everyone quickly through the canyon. That canyon was swarming with those creatures. Hungry, ferocious alien creatures were killing and eating each other. Riddick was just running fast without caring about anyone. During this time, they only had lamps made from alcohol bottles for light. But then another problem arose. Suddenly it started raining, which began to extinguish their lamps. They all hid behind a rock. The light was now dim, and at that moment, something terrifying happened. Imam started crying helplessly. Now only Riddick, Fry, Imam, and Jackie remained. Riddick climbed the hills, saw something, and said that it was no longer safe for them to go further because there was only death ahead. He said he would go alone and they should wait for him. There was a cave nearby. Riddick sent the three of them inside to hide and close the cave entrance with a rock. Now he continued forward with the batteries. Riddick had shown his true colors. There was no danger ahead, but the settlement was there. Riddick quickly reached the ship and started preparing to leave alone. Meanwhile, Fry, Imam, and Jack were waiting for Riddick to return. Soon they also realized that Riddick was not coming back. The three of them were sitting there relying on the light of their last remaining lamp. But soon that also went out. Now, trembling with fear, they started to shiver. But at that very moment, a ray of hope appeared. They saw some small glowing insects in that cave. Fry collected those insects in an alcohol bottle. They had found a source of light. Fry told Imam and Jack to wait there and went to Riddick, who was just about to take off. Fry pleaded with Riddick to go with her to save Imam and Jack, but Riddick told her to forget them, saying they wouldn't survive, but he told her she could come with him. However, Fry wasn't going to let him go that easily. She told Riddick that this was his chance to prove he wasn't an animal, but a good human by extending a helping hand. But Riddick laughed because his humanity had been buried years ago in a prison cell. Then Fry attacked Riddick, but Riddick overpowered her. Riddick was about to finish Fry off in an instant, but he suddenly stopped. He saw despair in Fry's eyes. The pain of losing someone was clearly visible in her eyes. On the other side, Imam and Jack were hiding in the cave, scared and trembling. They had also collected some glowing insects, but they only had faint light. Outside, someone was shaking the cave's rock with full force, and when the rock moved, they saw it was Fry, and now Riddick was with her too. Fry had awakened the humanity within Riddick. Both of them rescued Imam and Jack and started running towards the ship. Riddick helped them climb the hill and sent them ahead, but when he himself came over the hill, an alien stood in front of him. Riddick also stood in front of that alien without thinking for a second and started copying its movements. In this way, he was not coming into the alien's sight, but when he tried to run, several other aliens surrounded him from all sides. Now it was impossible for Riddick to escape. On the other side, Fry, Imam, and Jack had reached the ship, but Fry was waiting for Riddick. But in such a difficult time, where even Imam didn't dare to save Riddick, Fry went alone to help him. She saw that Riddick was badly injured, but he had managed to escape from the clutches of those aliens alive. Fry started helping him up. He started regretting that Fry had sacrificed herself to save him, but he pulled himself together because Fry couldn't come back. But to atone, he had to save Imam and Jack. He returned to the ship and was just about to start the ship and leave when an idea stopped him. He shut down the ship. He turned off all the lights and waited. As soon as a lot of aliens gathered behind the ship, Riddick, who had landed on that planet like a monster, was now returning as a human. Along with that dark world, he had also defeated the darkness within himself. And with that, the movie ended. If you liked the video, please like it and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.